When it comes to Washington quarters, not all of them are created equal. Some dates and mint marks quietly stand above the rest, not because they look flashy, but because of history, scarcity, and collector demand. These are the top 3 Washington quarter dollars every collector should know about. Number 3 is 1983 No Mint Mark Washington Quarter. This quarter is one of the most misunderstood modern coins. In 1983, the U.S. Mint did not issue official mint sets, meaning far fewer high-quality coins were saved at the time. Most 1983 quarters went straight into circulation and were heavily used. Because of that, finding a clean, uncirculated example today is surprisingly difficult. Worn examples are common, but high-grade coins can bring strong premiums. This quarter teaches collectors a powerful lesson: low survival can matter more than low mintage. Number 2, 1972 D Washington Quarter. At first glance, this coin looks ordinary, but collectors know better. Many 1972 D quarters were weakly struck, especially on the eagle's feathers. Fully struck examples with sharp detail are far scarcer than the mintage numbers suggest. Add in mint errors like off-center strikes or die cracks, and this quarter becomes a serious collector target. It represents the era of heavy circulation and mass production, where quality often took a back seat to quantity. Number 1, 1932 D Washington Quarter. This is the king of regular-issue Washington quarters. The 1932 D was struck during the Great Depression and had a very low mintage compared to other years. Many were melted or worn down through years of use. Even heavily circulated examples carry significant value, and high-grade pieces are among the most expensive Washington quarters ever sold. This coin isn't just rare, it's historically iconic and sits at the top of most collectors' want lists. What makes these 3 quarters special isn't just money, it's their story. Each one represents a different kind of rarity: survival rarity, strike quality rarity, and true low mintage rarity. Together, they show why collectors always say one thing: check your change and never judge a coin too quickly. The 1998 D Washington Quarter is one of those coins almost everyone has held, spent, or ignored without a second thought. It looks ordinary, familiar, almost invisible, but that's exactly why it deserves a closer look. Because coins like this don't shout their importance, they whisper it. This quarter was struck in Denver in 1998, just 1 year before one of the biggest changes in U.S. coin history. It belongs to the final chapter of the classic Washington quarter design, the version Americans had used for more than 6 decades. When you hold a 1998 D quarter, you're holding one of the last representatives of an era that quietly ended in 1999 with the launch of the state quarters program. By 1998, the United States was a very different place than when the Washington quarter was first introduced in 1932. The internet was entering everyday life, the economy was strong, technology was accelerating, and yet the quarter in your hand still carried the same dignified image of George Washington that Americans had trusted for generations. That contrast between a fast-changing world and a steady coin design is part of what makes this piece historically meaningful. The obverse features John Flanagan's iconic portrait of George Washington. His calm expression, tied-back hair, and strong profile were designed to reflect leadership, restraint, and permanence. Around him are the familiar inscriptions: "Liberty in God We Trust" and the date 1998. The D mint mark just to the right of Washington's ponytail tells us this coin was struck in Denver, one of the busiest mints in the country at the time. The reverse shows the heraldic eagle with spread wings, clutching arrows, and olive branches. This design had appeared on quarters for decades, symbolizing both strength and peace. By the late 1990s, many people no longer paid attention to it, which is exactly why collectors today are re-examining these final eagleback quarters more carefully. In terms of production, the 1998 D quarter was struck in very large numbers. Hundreds of millions were made, which means most examples you find today are worth face value in circulated condition. But that does not mean the coin is worthless. In coin collecting, value is not only about rarity, it's about condition, timing, and details most people overlook. High-grade examples of the 1998 D quarter, especially those that were never circulated, tell a very different story. Coins with sharp details, strong luster, and minimal contact marks are becoming harder to find as time passes. Many were released directly into circulation, where they quickly picked up scratches and wear. That makes well-preserved examples increasingly desirable to collectors who focus on late 20th century U.S. coinage. Collectors also pay close attention to strike quality. Some 1998 D quarters show weaker details in Washington's hair or the eagle's feathers due to worn dies or high-speed production. Finding a sharply struck coin with full detail can significantly increase its appeal. Coins like that often come from mint sets or carefully saved rolls. Then there are errors and varieties, the hidden side of modern coin collecting. While the 1998 D quarter is not famous for major varieties, minor mint errors do exist. Off-center strikes, clipped planchets, die cracks, and weak strikes can all add interest and value. These are the kinds of coins that slip through unnoticed by the public but are eagerly searched for by experienced collectors. Another reason the 1998 D quarter matters is its place in transition. It represents the end of a design philosophy that prioritized uniformity and tradition. After 1998, quarters would become educational tools, state symbols, and rotating designs. The simple, consistent Washington quarter disappeared almost overnight. Coins like this became a quiet goodbye to an era most people didn't realize was ending. From a preservation standpoint, collectors today are becoming more thoughtful. A clean, dry environment, gentle handling by the edges, and simple coin holders can make a huge difference over time. Even a common coin like the 1998 D quarter can gain collector interest decades later if it survives in exceptional condition. What makes this coin especially interesting is how it challenges assumptions. People often believe only very old coins matter, but modern coins tell stories too, stories of economic confidence, mass production, and a society on the edge of change. The 1998 D quarter captures that moment perfectly. So the next time you see a Washington quarter dated 1998 with a small D mint mark, don't rush to spend it. Take a second look, check the surfaces, study the details, ask yourself where it's been and how it survived, because sometimes the most overlooked coins are the ones that teach us the most. And that's the real lesson of the 1998 D Washington quarter. Not that it's rare, not that it's instantly valuable, but that it represents a closing chapter in American coinage, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to notice. The 1972 D Washington quarter comes from a time when America was changing fast, but its coins still carried a sense of tradition and stability. At first glance, this quarter looks just like countless others. Same familiar face, same eagle, same silver-colored appearance. But behind that ordinary look is a coin that represents an important moment in U.S. history and modern coin collecting. This quarter was struck at the Denver Mint in 1972, identified by the small D mint mark located just to the right of George Washington's ponytail. By this point, quarters were no longer made of silver. That change had already happened in 1965 when rising silver prices forced the U.S. Mint to switch to a copper-nickel-clad composition. So the 1972 D quarter is made of a copper core sandwiched between two layers of nickel, giving it durability for heavy circulation. America in 1972 was living through major transitions. The Vietnam War was winding down. The space race had already placed humans on the moon. Inflation and economic uncertainty were beginning to creep into everyday life. Yet the Washington quarter remained unchanged, continuing a design that had symbolized strength and unity since 1932. That sense of continuity is one of the reasons collectors today still respect coins from this era. The obverse of the coin features John Flanagan's classic portrait of George Washington. His expression is calm and composed, a reminder of leadership and restraint during uncertain times. The word liberty arches across the top, while in God we trust sits to the left. The date 1972 appears at the bottom, quietly marking a year that would later be remembered as part of a turbulent decade. On the reverse, the heraldic eagle stands proudly with wings spread wide, clutching arrows and olive branches. This design had been used for decades and was familiar to every American. By the early 1970s, most people no longer gave it much thought, which is exactly why collectors now take a closer look. The 1972 D Washington quarter was produced in large numbers, meaning most examples found in circulation today are worth face value. But condition is everything. Coins that survived without heavy wear, scratches, or dull surfaces are far more desirable. A sharp strike, especially in Washington's hair and the eagle's feathers, can make a big difference in collector appeal. Many 1972 D quarters were struck quickly to meet circulation demand. Because of this, weak strikes are common, particularly on the reverse. Finding a well-struck example with full feather detail is becoming harder with time. Coins like that often come from mint sets or rolls that were saved shortly after release. Errors also add another layer of interest. While the 1972 D quarter is not famous for dramatic varieties, minor mint errors do exist. Off-center strikes, clipped planchets, die cracks, and lamination errors occasionally appear. These are the kinds of coins that slip past everyday use but catch the attention of serious collectors. What makes the 1972 D quarter especially interesting is its place in history. It belongs to the long final stretch of the original Washington quarter design, decades before the state quarters program would completely change how Americans looked at their pocket change. Coins like this were never meant to be collectibles, they were workhorses of commerce. And that's exactly why high-quality survivors are becoming more appreciated. For collectors, preservation matters. Even a common quarter can become desirable decades later if it remains in excellent condition. Handling coins by the edges, storing them in protective holders, and keeping them away from moisture can preserve their surfaces and luster. This coin also tells a bigger story about modern collecting. Not every valuable coin is rare. Some coins gain importance because they represent an era, a transition, or a way of life that no longer exists. The 1972 D Washington quarter reminds us of a time when coins were simple, consistent, and rarely questioned. So the next time you come across a 1972 quarter with a D mint mark, don't dismiss it too quickly. Look closely at the details. Check the strike. Notice the condition. Because while it may not be rare, it carries history, character, and the quiet significance of a nation in motion. Sometimes, the most interesting coins aren't the ones worth the most money, they're the ones that connect us to the past in ways we never expected. The 1981 D Washington quarter is a coin most people have seen, spent, and forgotten. It doesn't look rare, it doesn't shine like silver, and yet, it comes from one of the most unusual periods in modern U.S. coin history, a time when even the mint itself was changing how coins were made, saved, and collected. This quarter was struck at the Denver Mint in 1981, marked by the small D just to the right of George Washington's ponytail. By this time, the Washington quarter had already been in circulation for nearly 50 years, still carrying John Flanagan's original design first introduced in 1932. The coin was made of a copper-nickel-clad composition, designed for durability rather than beauty, because these quarters were meant to work hard in everyday commerce. America in 1981 was at a turning point. Inflation was high, interest rates were extreme, gas prices, jobs, and the cost of living were on everyone's mind. Ronald Reagan had just taken office, promising economic change and national confidence, and quietly in the background, millions of quarters like this one were being struck and released into circulation. What makes the 1981 D Washington quarter especially interesting is that 1981 was one of the last years the U.S. Mint produced regular mint sets for general collectors. Because of this, many collectors at the time saved coins directly from mint packaging instead of circulation. That decision had a lasting impact on the survival rate of high-grade examples. The obverse of the coin features Washington's familiar profile, calm and composed. The inscriptions "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" frame the design, with the date 1981 anchoring it firmly in a decade of economic uncertainty. On many circulated examples, Washington's hair and cheek show quick wear, which makes clean, sharply struck coins much more desirable today. The reverse shows the traditional eagle with outstretched wings, clutching arrows and olive branches. By 1981, this design was so familiar that few people ever stopped to examine it closely, but collectors know that strike quality matters. Weak feather details and flat surfaces are common on circulation strikes, making fully detailed examples harder to find than most people realize. Production numbers for the 1981 D quarter were lower than many surrounding years. While not rare, this smaller mintage adds subtle collector interest, especially when combined with high condition. Coins graded in high mint state levels can command strong premiums compared to face value, particularly those with clean fields and bright luster. Errors also play a role in the story. Off-center strikes, clipped planchets, die cracks, and misaligned dies have been found on 1981 D quarters. These errors weren't noticed by the public at the time, but today they represent some of the most exciting finds for modern collectors. Another reason this coin matters is its place in the timeline. The 1981 D quarter belongs to the final decades of the original Washington quarter design before the massive transformation of the state quarters program in 1999. Coins like this represent the end of an era when U.S. coinage was consistent, predictable, and rarely questioned. From a collector education standpoint, the 1981 D quarter teaches an important lesson. Value isn't always about age or silver content, it's about condition, context, and survival. Millions were made, but very few survived in exceptional shape without marks, dullness, or wear. Proper preservation can make all the difference. Coins stored away from moisture, handled only by the edges, and kept in protective holders can retain their original surfaces for decades. Many of today's best examples exist only because someone chose not to spend them in 1981. So when you come across a Washington quarter dated 1981 with a D mint mark, don't dismiss it as just pocket change. Look closer. Study the details. Think about the time it came from, because coins like this don't just represent money, they represent a moment in American history that's slowly fading from everyday memory. The 1981 D Washington quarter may be common, but its story is anything but ordinary.